It took a long time to get pregnant in the first place, which was, it took years. And we had to go to a lot of doctors, and we eventually had to use IVF in vitro. But when we found out that we succeeded, that was really exciting, and that we were having twins was even more exciting because of everything we'd gone through. You know, not only were we going to have one, but we were going to have two. And just thinking about, twins and them having that special relationship of twins was really cool. It was really exciting. The pregnancy itself was pretty normal. It seemed like it was normal. And about 6 months in, I went in for a regular appointment. And within an hour, I was at the hospital because it turned out I was in labor, and I couldn't feel it, but it was really obvious to the doctors when they did all their checks that something wasn't right and that I was really close to delivering. And they put me on medications to try and stop the labor, and those are called tocolytics. And those caused fluid in my lungs, so they had to stop those. I was fine for them keeping them, just no problem, just keep giving me this stuff and put me on oxygen, just whatever you do, stop the labor. And the plan was to keep me in the hospital for another 2 to 3 months until I reached at least 34 weeks, and then they would deliver at that point. But I only made it 5 days, so I went in on a Friday, and because they had to take me off the medication, by Wednesday I was in labor again, active labor again, and they had to deliver them early. Everything started in the middle of the night. By 9 a.m. I was having an emergency C-section, and they delivered Austin first, and then they delivered his brother. His name was Philip Noble, and I didn't get to see them at all. They immediately took them to the neonatal intensive care because they weren't breathing, and they had to try and intubate them so that they would have oxygen and try and revive them because they just weren't making it. I didn't know what was going on because at first the doctors were sitting at the end of the bed, and they were saying things that I didn't understand, that they were having a hard time. I didn't understand that he was dying. And so then they brought him to me, and I understood. And I just got to hold him, and he was so small. I mean, they were both 1 pound 14 ounces, so they were only, this big. So I was holding this very, very tiny thing. He was moving, but he wasn't really breathing. His heart was beating for another hour, or about an hour after he was born. So I got to hold him, and then he just wasn't alive anymore. His lungs just couldn't take it. His lungs had holes in them. It's called pneumothorax, and he had that in both lungs. So they had given, whenever there's going to be a premature birth, they give you steroid shots to try and do what they can to mature the lungs faster. And I did have those shots, but it wasn't enough for his lungs. His lungs just couldn't function. And Austin had a whole lot of trouble with his lungs, and he was intubated with oxygen for a lot longer than anybody hoped he would be. So that was one of his toughest complications as well. And one of the treatments they use is called surfactant, and that helps open up the lungs and that the lungs don't stick together. The March Times research is what's behind the development of surfactant therapy. So that's one of the reasons I got involved. And just, there's a lot of stress in a NICU because of all the noise and everything going around and everybody checking on you and all these tubes and wires and antibiotics and all of that. So he has this little blue dog that my brother gave him the day he was born. And we found that if we put the dog on his head, his his oxygen saturation would go up, his heart level would mellow out, and he would be fine. So it's this funny little stuffed blue dog that he still sleeps with every night to this day. It's his best buddy, and that dog, putting it on his head, calmed him down a lot of the time. So the joke was that he collected ologists the way some people collect stamps. He just, lots of doctors. He's small for his age, and he had a really severe speech delay, but now he's very articulate, and he does really well in school, and he's curious about everything. People who have preemies, and they find out that he was a preemie, and they look at him and they're like, all right, there's hope. It's not just a statistic that your kid will probably be okay. This is what a kid that went through all of those things looks like, and he's doing great. So it's it's a good thing. It's an amazing thing that he is who he is. I didn't know about the March of Dimes when I was pregnant. I didn't know about prematurity when I was pregnant. I figured prematurity was for drug addicts. That the people who had preemies did something wrong. So I did everything right, and it was really surprising when I all of a sudden had a preemie, and I learned through the March of Dimes and through the hospital that 50% of the time they don't know what causes prematurity. I actually went to Sacramento to talk to some legislators about his experience, and other parents came too, to talk about this funding and to get these bills passed to increase the testing so that they could identify more abnormalities and treat them immediately and save a lot more children. So now California tests for the tests that exist, whereas a few years ago they tested for only a few, and they were one of the lowest states. And now most states test for that, and so that's some of the advocacy that March of Dimes does. So they do research, and they do outreach, and they do education. One of the things that most women know who are pregnant now is that they need folic acid, and folic acid can reduce what are called neural tube defects in babies, and everybody knows just now to take folic acid. Well, that's March of Dimes research again, and the outreach to get that into the community, into the medical community, and to promote that information was also done by the March of Dimes. So it's there's a lot of different things to do to ensure the health of babies. Actually, I do March of Dimes more to in a way to honor and be connected to Austin's brother. And then Austin does it with me in honor of his brother. So, you know, it was something that I did personally that now my company does, which is really cool to have had that impact, because I just wanted to have some, you know, to raise some money, because some of the stuff that March of Dimes has done helped me. You know, you can say 1 in 8 babies is born prematurely, and birth defects are a leading cause of death, and infant mortality, and prematurity is a major cause of infant mortality, and you can say all of these things, but it doesn't always connect with people unless they hear somebody's own story. So I share my story.